All right, well, welcome to our interview with experts this week. Our guest today is Dr. Ted Wagener, who is an assistant professor in the Department of Pediatrics at the OU Health Sciences Center. He also happens to be a co-director of the Oklahoma Tobacco Research Center. So welcome, Ted.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Would you mind just starting off by telling us a little bit about what you do?
I do actually both research and clinical work. So my clinical work is in behavioral sleep medicine with both kids and adults. And then research-wise, I actually investigate e-cigarettes and their impact on health and public health, how people use them, their safety, their efficacy. And then I also look at methods to reduce secondhand smoke exposure in children.
Right, both of those, sleep and your work with tobacco, are topics of interest in our class. Could you tell us first a little bit about what is sleep medicine and what does a psychologist do in sleep medicine?
Yeah, interestingly, most sleep disorders, which are quite pervasive in the population, are actually treated behaviorally. The first line and the best treatment are actually behavioral treatments. So if you're talking about pediatric sleep disorders, there's approximately 15 different sleep disorders, and all but two are treated behaviorally. If you look at adult sleep disorders, again, there's about 13, 14 disorders. All but two are treated behaviorally. So everything from insomnia down to, delayed sleep phase. So people who are more accustomed to sleeping at night than during the day, but that impacts when they can wake up and make it to work on time. Those are all treated behaviorally. Things like narcolepsy and sleep apnea are typically treated medically. So a sleep psychologist has a huge role to play in behavioral sleep medicine, and it's a growing field that, unfortunately, up until this time, very few psychologists took part in. So it was really an unmet need. But now the word's starting to get out, and more people are doing it. And it's also, for those who want to do it full time, it can actually be quite lucrative as well.
Okay, terrific. In regards to your research, I know you've been really involved in the e-cigarettes, and those are somewhat controversial. Can you tell us a little bit about e-cigarettes in general and maybe some of your research or perspective on it?
Sure. So e-cigarettes have been evolving over the last 4 or 5 years from products that looked a whole lot like regular cigarettes to products now that look almost nothing like cigarettes and resemble more, flashlights or maybe even, like I don't know, a battery. They don't tend to look like cigarettes anymore. That evolution has led to essentially devices that deliver nicotine more efficiently, and so that brings about potential promise in terms of devices that could replace combustible cigarettes, which is a huge thing in the field of tobacco control research now, which is finding treatments, nicotine delivery devices that deliver nicotine cleaner than cigarettes to help people switch to cleaner devices. But it also scares the tobacco control community as well to have nicotine devices that deliver nicotine really well, because their concern is then people will start a life of nicotine addiction and then maybe later on go on to things that deliver nicotine but with a host of carcinogens like combustible cigarettes. So I know what I said there was brief, but it also needs to be unpacked a little bit. And so to start unpacking it, there's a little history I think that's important to know. One, for years, the idea of tobacco control was just to get everyone to stop smoking cigarettes, to stop using traditional smokeless tobacco through various means. So typically by having them meet either one-on-one with a cessation counselor or calling a quit line, or quitting on their own, or talking with a doctor. what we've realized is over time that that is ineffective. It's effective, but it just doesn't have enough reach. So something can have a lot of efficacy, but if you can't give that treatment to all the people who need it, it has very little reach. So the idea is to find, are there things out there that would have more reach, but maybe a little bit less efficacy, but then has the potential to have a huge impact. And so there was the idea that maybe if we do things like take NRT, nicotine replacement therapy, like gum patches and lozenge, and instead of making them medicinal products, and require a prescription for those, we sell them over the counter. So that was a strategy that really hasn't helped. There was the idea that what if we raise taxes on cigarettes? Make the taxes $10 a pack. What if we create smoke-free indoor smoke-free laws? Those are huge public health strategies that have shown some pretty strong efficacy and obviously have huge reach. The issue is it doesn't seem as though it's enough using cessation treatment, large public health policies like that to actually bring down the smoking rate to a point where we would all be happy with it. Honestly, we're actually struggling to stop where we still are not at a point where we're having fewer people starting smoking as who are quitting. So it's especially if you look at from a worldwide standpoint. So in the last few years, e-cigarettes have come out. This was entirely a free market phenomenon. It wasn't brought about by any public health officials. And it seems to be what people are terming a disruptive technology that has mass appeal to smokers and maybe also has mass appeal to youth. But it does seem that a substantial portion of people who use e-cigarettes eventually quit smoking. And, what's the positive of that? Well, smokers tend to smoke for the nicotine, but they die from all the combustion. So if we can give them a nicotine product that delivers cleanly, similar to NRT, that would be a positive. What makes NRT unattractive to people is, one, it doesn't deliver nicotine very well, and it doesn't always taste the best. E-cigarettes appear to taste really good and also seem to deliver nicotine really well. So it's a product that really has a chance to shape the tobacco landscape. However, that has issues. A lot of people aren't. There's a lot of debate over whether it's going to be a starter product for youth, a gateway product for youth to go on to combustible tobacco, and if it will is nicotine addiction a good thing? Is it just like caffeine addiction, or is there something else to it?
I know you've actually addressed that question of whether e-cigs are a gateway to traditional cigarettes in some of your own research. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So we have examined through a university in Oklahoma students. We surveyed students and asked, what was the first tobacco product you ever tried, and then what your current use level is. And so we've been doing this study now for almost, I think we're in our third year. And what we found is essentially every year more and more students are having the e-cigarette be the first nicotine or tobacco product that they've ever tried. So that's growing. The number of folks who are also trying cigarettes as their first product is going down. So it seems as though there's a little bit of substitution there with people starting off with e-cigarettes instead of cigarettes. Now the question is, where do those people who start with e-cigarettes end up? And thankfully, it looks as though so far in 3 years of data that all of those who first started with e-cigarettes, which is about 90 folks, only 3 have gone on to sustain use of nicotine or tobacco. One of those people was a daily smoker, and 2 others were non-daily users of e-cigarettes. So again, suggesting positive results that e-cigarettes may not be a gateway to more harmful tobacco addiction. That study is is a good study and it's a good first start. However, longitudinal studies are needed, and they are ongoing right now. There's a big study called the PATH study, which is following youth all the way from elementary school, and we'll follow them for 15 years and see their tobacco use and how that develops. However, the other thing that in the meantime that can also show us maybe that e-cigarettes won't be a gateway is we're seeing at a national level that combustible tobacco use, even among youth, continues to decline, but e-cigarette use continues to go up. So it does seem like there's substitution happening.
Well, Ted, one of the last things I'd like to ask you is if you could tell the students in the class a little bit about your career path from an undergrad, where the students who are watching this are, to the job you have today. Can you just tell us a little bit about how you got from there to here?
Uh, yeah, it's a varied path. I majored in psychology and philosophy in undergrad, and never thought I was going to go to graduate school for clinical psych. I actually thought I was going to do something in business or something to that effect. And after graduating from undergrad at the College of Worcester in Ohio, I actually waited around for a year for my future wife to finish up her last year. And so I took a job as an assistant manager at Chipotle Mexican Grill, and stayed there for a couple of years and ended up becoming an area manager for Chipotle down in Atlanta. And then decided that, this wasn't what I wanted to do the rest of my life. So applied to graduate school and got accepted. Took actually 2 years to get accepted to graduate school. So never stopped trying. And got accepted at OSU, took the position, started to focus in tobacco, and then moved on to college drinking. And then during my internship year at Brown, refocused in on smoking interventions, specifically motivational interventions to reduce secondhand smoke exposure to kids. And then during that time, saw that e-cigarettes were something that I thought were pretty interesting and going to take off. So decided to focus on those throughout my postdoc still at Brown. And then came out here to OUHSC, applied for a faculty position, and saw a really great opportunity with a growing tobacco research center here on campus and a growing cancer center, and took the chance that I'd be able to succeed here studying tobacco research. And they also gave me the opportunity to do something that I love, which is practice behavioral sleep medicine. So I took it. And that's about how the story goes. I keep growing in my research. Keep taking as many chances as possible. Networking becomes really important once you're in graduate school, but definitely in postdoc and in a faculty position, and opening up different opportunities for yourself. So saying yes oftentimes is more important than you might think.
Well, Ted, this was super informative, and thank you for being with us today.
Thank you.